Today at 1, Iran warns the USA not to step up military support for Israel. As the conflict enters its 6th day, Iran's supreme leader says his country will never surrender and tells the US there'll be irreparable harm if they intervene in support of Israel. Well, reports suggest Donald Trump has been considering escalating American involvement, also on the programme. There could and should have been an arrest following the death of Harry Dunn. A report criticises police for not detaining the wife of a US diplomat and says Harry's family are right to feel let down.
It's just beyond comprehensible at the moment, to be perfectly honest, but I've just got to do what I've done before and try to channel that anger into making sure that changes are made.
France pledges to shift efforts to stop migrant boats crossing the Channel. Special squads will intercept dinghies up to 300 metres offshore instead of stopping on land. Inflation stays stubborn at 3.4%. Food price rises are much higher, while travel has got cheaper. As heat health alerts come in across much of England, a new study shows an increased likelihood of temperatures reaching 40 degrees Celsius in the coming years.
And coming up on BBC News, the man who stalked Emma Raducanu earlier in the year is stopped from applying for tickets to this month's Wimbledon Championships.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the news at 1. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has warned Washington of irreparable consequences if the US becomes directly involved in Israel's military campaign against Tehran. It's understood that President Trump is considering joining the attacks on Iran's nuclear sites. Here's our diplomatic correspondent, Caroline Hawley.
For a 6th straight night, Israel kept up its unprecedented assault on Iran. These images, captured by an Iranian television station, show air defences in action above Tehran, trying to stop incoming Israeli fire. We don't know the exact target, but Israel says that overnight it hit a university linked to Iran's powerful Revolutionary Guards, as well as facilities linked to its missile and nuclear program. These satellite images show a military base in Tabriz in the northwest of the country, here before and here after it was struck. Donald Trump, who left a meeting of G7 leaders early, has called for Iran's unconditional surrender and is reported to be considering joining Israel's strikes on its nuclear facilities. He's described the country's supreme leader as an easy target. Now, a defiant response from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, his words read out by a presenter on state-run TV. Iranians, he said, are not people who surrender, and any form of US military intervention would be met with what he called irreparable harm. For civilians in Tehran, these are terrifying times. Shops shut, quiet streets. Many people are holed up at home, hiding, we're told, in basements and garages. Many others have already fled the capital, among them Narges Mohammadi, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, who spent many years in Iran's jails.
I witnessed horrendous attacks. They're hitting infrastructure, a lot of civilian deaths. We have a misogynist theocracy in Iran, with the supreme leader Ali Khamenei on the top, who took us to hell whilst promising heaven. And at the same time now, Netanyahu is also taking us to hell.
Iran is still firing at Israel, but not at the same rate as before. Overnight, missiles were intercepted over Tel Aviv. Some limited damage reported, but no more casualties. In Cyprus, 2 repatriation flights were laid on to bring Israelis stranded abroad back home. Nobody knows how long the war will go on for, how it might escalate or end. And so many Iranians and foreign nationals are escaping Iran if they can. This, the border with Pakistan. But many others are trapped where they are. Everyone afraid of what could come next. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
Well, in a moment, We'll speak with our Middle East correspondent Hugo Bichega, who's in Jerusalem this lunch.
Iran's nuclear capabilities deep underground. But make no mistake, if that is what the US does, it is a profoundly defining moment of Trump's presidency, seismic. This is a man who has long campaigned for no foreign wars, attacked Barack Obama, accusing him of trying to start a war with Iran, and only back in May said in Saudi Arabia that the era of foreign intervention was over. So lots of his supporters will be saying, what happened to that man? Could there be regime change? Well, Donald Trump also said yesterday, threatened to potentially kill the Supreme Leader. So we just don't know what could happen next. And bear in mind, if the US does get involved, how could Iran react to it? Again, we don't know, and it could put the US in a very, very dangerous moment.
Nomia, thank you. Well, let's get the picture then from Jerusalem. Our correspondent Hugo Bichega is there. On the ground, Hugo, how will these words have been received, and what's the latest on the conflict from that perspective?
Yeah, Nina, so Israel has continued to attack Iran. The military said more than 50 planes hit about 20 targets across Tehran overnight, including weapons production facilities. And on the ground in Iran, we've seen those huge traffic jams of residents trying to flee the city, Tehran, because of fears of an escalation of this conflict. Shortages of petrol and food are being felt. Also, some cash machines are not working. So this is the impact on the population there. Now, in Israel, as Caroline said, there was a wave of attacks, two waves actually, of Iranian missile attacks overnight. The Iranians said they had used for the first time a hypersonic missile, which is a missile that is more difficult to be intercepted by air defenses. But there have been no reports of casualties. And we're seeing that the recent attacks haven't been as intense, which is probably an indication of the impact of these Israeli airstrikes on the Iranian military. And just moments ago, the Israeli government announced that some of the restrictions that had been imposed because of the war are now being eased. There will be, limited gatherings are now being allowed, but crucially, schools and the airspace remain closed. But this is an indication that the Israeli authorities believe that the threat coming from Iran has diminished.
OK, Hugo, in Jerusalem, thank you. In other news this lunchtime, a review has criticised the way police handled the investigation into the death of the teenage motorcyclist Harry Dunn. The 19-year-old was killed 6 years ago after being hit by a car driven by the wife of an American diplomat. Well, the government says that the Foreign Secretary is personally committed to ensuring that lessons were learned from the handling of the case. Sean Dilley reports.
This was the Northamptonshire country lane where Harry Dunn was struck in August 2019. He was hit by Anne Sakoulis, the wife of a US diplomat who was driving on the wrong side of the road. Harry's injuries proved fatal. Today's report, commissioned by Northamptonshire Police, said officers failed Harry Dunn's family. Investigators did not arrest Anne Sakoulis and they did not test her for drugs. The retired police officer who authored the report said they should have done both.
I appreciate their honesty in the whole of this report, but I have to make sure that in future, what should have been done is done. It can't change our fight that we had. It could have made things a lot easier for us, but from now onwards, I have to make sure that no other family has to go through listening to what we have to hear on Monday and what we have to read in this report.
Both the Force and the UK Foreign Office were criticised heavily. In the days after the collision, Antsoukalis had left the United Kingdom under the cloak of diplomatic immunity. But the report found that Northamptonshire police had agreed to a request by the Foreign Office to delay telling Harry Dunn's family of her departure. This, the report said, gave Harry Dunn's family the impression that the Force and the Foreign Office had colluded. Northamptonshire's Assistant Chief Constable Emma James said, "I want to apologise to Harry's family for what is now clear was a failure on our part to do the very best for the victim in this case." This is a report written by a former police officer and commissioned by the very force that admitted it failed Harry Dunn and his family. What it does not address is the detail of the backroom deals done by diplomats in the UK and the US that eventually saw Antsoukalis convicted via video link of death by careless driving and handed an 8-month suspended prison sentence. Sean Dilley, BBC News.
The latest figures from the Office for National Statistics show that UK inflation remained at 3.4%, offset by a drop in airfares and transport costs. The Conservatives say the figures are deeply worrying, but the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, did acknowledge there's more work to do. Our business correspondent Theo Leggett reports.
A sunny day by the sea in Whitstable. In the harbour market, Zaina Omar's coffee stall is doing a brisk trade. She says well-to-do retirees in the town still have plenty of money to spend, but others are clearly feeling the pinch.
Young families, they will price check first. And more people will bring packed lunches, which is another thing. So they'll buy a coffee, but they won't buy food because they've bought the wine, they can't afford it.
Prices aren't rising nearly as fast as they were 2 or 3 years ago, but they are still going up, and the impact of past increases on the cost of living is still being felt.
These are silver oyster shells that have got a pearl inside.
Stephen Randall, who owns the market and has a jewellery shop there, says his customers are spending a lot less these days.
Before, they may be spending 150, 200 quite happily on pieces. They've come right down to anything between 40 and 60 pounds. At times. There's a real drop.
Although the headline rate of inflation hasn't increased, it remains well above the Bank of England's target. Food and housing costs saw some of the biggest increases, and it's those sorts of things which people can't avoid paying that have the biggest impact on the day-to-day cost of living.
I try and keep the shopping budget down, but week on week I'm having to feed it just to get the basics.
And if anything, my takings each year come down a little bit. I'm still surviving.
Prices in shops always go up, but that's the definition.
Looking ahead, the bank had been expected to cut interest rates at least once and possibly twice before the end of the year. That was because the economy's been seen to be struggling. In fact, in April, it shrank by 0.3%, and at the same time, inflation was expected to fall after the summer. But if conflict in the Middle East pushes up the price of oil, that pushes up the cost of making and transporting goods. It also pushes up the cost of petrol, and that could lead to another spike in inflation. And of course, if inflation is rising, you don't want to be cutting interest rates. So uncertainty over the economy, uncertainty for the Bank of England when it comes to interest rates, and uncertainty, therefore, for borrowers and savers.
OK, Theo in London, thank you. The government's flagship reforms to the welfare system are set to be introduced in Parliament today. Well, the plans are expected to include the tightening of criteria for the main disability benefit, PIP, and is part of a package aimed at saving £5 billion by 2030. Well, our political correspondent Leila Nathu joins us this lunchtime from Westminster. Hi, Leila. This continues to be a really divisive issue for the Labour Party, one that goes right to the heart of its identity.
Certainly does, Nina, but today is not the day that we're going to see those disagreements play out publicly in Parliament, at least. It's just the day that we are getting the formal legislation laid out. But that doesn't mean that there aren't very notable concerns and disagreements within Labour over the plans. The government's essentially saying that the welfare system is not working as it should be, that there are too many people who are out of work who could and should be in work, so they are going to try and support those people into jobs. But they're also saying the benefits bill in total is unsustainable. And so there is a savings plan to £5 billion a year, as you mentioned, £5 billion by 2030. So the positive case for reform and also the financial necessity too. And there's concern among those in Labour at some of the cuts that are planned to try to achieve those savings. So notably, you mentioned those planned changes to try to restrict eligibility for the personal independence payments. That is something that concerned disability campaigners and charities too, concerned that some of the most vulnerable people could be left worse off. Now, the government has tried to introduce some measures to try to soften and reassure Labour MPs, but this is certainly going to be a big test for Keir Starmer's government. Although he has a massive majority, he is certainly facing his biggest rebellion yet.
Hey, Leila, in Westminster, thank you. The time is 16 minutes past 1. Our top story this afternoon. Iran's supreme leader has warned the USA not to step up military support for Israel and said there will be irreparable harm if they intervene. Still to come, the Health Secretary considers calls for an independent inquiry into maternity care at Leeds Teaching Hospital's NHS Trust after a BBC investigation revealed potentially avoidable harm to babies and mums.
Coming up on BBC News, England's Lauren James becomes the latest player to highlight the constant abuse they receive online, as many say they'll stay off social media for the Euros.
Downing Street says the small boat situation in the English Channel is deteriorating, and police in France are struggling to deter a potentially record-breaking number of people from reaching the UK. Well, French authorities will be introducing new measures from the beginning of next month, which will allow officers to intercept migrant dinghies up to 300 metres from the shore. Well, let's have a look at the numbers. So 1,733 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats in the last 7 days, and that takes the total for the year so far to 16,545 people. That represents a 45% increase on the same period last year. Around 37,000 people came to the UK in small boats in 2024. Well, this morning, our correspondent Andrew Harding is on a beach in Gravelines between Calais and Dunkirk in northern France. Andrew, what have you seen over the past few days?
Well, it's getting very busy here now. The weather is calm. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people gathering in the forests, in the camps along the coast, waiting for their chance to get across. We know there's been some violence between rival smuggling gangs. As for the police, they insist they are making some progress. They claim to be stopping more than a third of all these inflatable boats before they're launched. In other words, they intercept them on the roads or the beaches. They often then slash them to make them unusable. They're using often drones and beach buggies that have been paid for by the British government. And yet still, the numbers of people successfully crossing the Channel to the UK is rising.
And Andrew, France are now planning to intercept boats carrying migrants up to 300 metres offshore. That represents a shift. Is there any optimism that that will make a difference?
It is a shift, and we have to wait for the details. At the moment, we don't know yet whether it's police perhaps starting to wade into the water to try and intercept boats. That seems less likely than other boats at sea, police boats being used to try and intercept these small boats that the smugglers are using before they've got too many passengers on board. And at a point when the risks and the rewards, that balance seems to favour the French police. We're waiting for the details. The concern and the headache really for the French police is that they have 100, maybe even 150 kilometres of coastline to patrol, and that's going to take an awful lot of boats and officers to make any real impact, particularly when they need to intervene so very quickly because the smugglers are getting very adept at launching these boats.
OK, Andrew in Gravelines in northern France, thank you. The Princess of Wales has pulled out of an expected appearance at Royal Ascot. Catherine, who's in remission from cancer, is making a gradual return to public life and was at Trooping the Colour at the weekend. She's said to be disappointed to miss the day at the races. In the past hour, the Transport Secretary has announced the completion of the high-speed rail line HS2 will be delayed again. The route between London and Birmingham was due to be completed by 2026 and then revised to 2033. But now the Transport Secretary says even that target is impossible, blaming the Conservatives for changing plans. Our transport correspondent Nick Marsh reports.
It's another delay for HS2. The high-speed rail project that's never managed to stay on track. When construction began, the original aim was to open in 2026. That was then pushed back to 2033 at the latest. Now, the Transport Secretary says that even that target will be impossible. But she insists that it's not this government that's to blame. Instead, it was the Conservatives, she says, who wasted billions of pounds of taxpayers' money by frequently changing plans and handing out expensive contracts. In a ministerial statement in Parliament this afternoon, she's presenting the findings of 2 independent reports, which are scathing about previous governments' handling of the project. She says a litany of failure was responsible for driving up costs by £37 billion between 2012 and last year.
Let's invest across our country, let people decide, and let's put the power into the Northern Powerhouse.
The plan was to connect the capital with Birmingham and then Leeds and Manchester, but spiralling costs meant that these legs were eventually cancelled. The Conservative Chancellor, who first tried to get the project off the ground, criticised that decision last month.
I think those two things, have been big missed opportunities, and a succession of governments that came after me said they were going to do them and haven't, and I guess now the pressure is on the current government to deliver.
This government says it's keen to draw a line in the sand when it comes to HS2, but so far it's not clear what the exact new timeline is and what the exact costs will be. Nick Marsh, BBC News.
A member of the Irish language rap group Kneecap has been given unconditional bail and told to return to court again in August. Liam O'Hanna appeared at Westminster magistrates accused of displaying a flag in support of the terrorist organisation Hezbollah at a concert in November last year. Well, our correspondent Charlotte Gallagher is at Westminster Magistrates Court for us this lunchtime. Charlotte, there's been a lot of attention around this case and around what it represents for artists. What was heard in court?
Well, the court hearing was actually over in minutes, Nina, but outside court there was this huge crowd of people that were here for hours, hundreds of supporters of Kneecap and also Liam O'Gohany with flags, with banners. There was a band, there was drumming. Inside court was very different, obviously, over fairly quickly, quite administrative, to be honest. So this incident relates to an alleged offence that took place in London in November last year, and Liam O'Gohany was accused of displaying the flag of Hezbollah at a concert and also allegedly saying, "Up Hamas, up Hezbollah." Now, Hezbollah are a banned terror group, so that's why he was charged with this offence. But inside court there was discussion about whether this could be dealt with by the magistrate, because the defence was saying essentially he was charged too late, time had run out, and he couldn't be charged, and the case could go no further. But they are going to be back here in August, and as you said, Mr. Ohani, who's known as Mokara as well, his rap name, he was released on unconditional bail to return here on the 20th of August, and that will likely mean that the band will play at Glastonbury next week. They've got one of the big slots at the festival, and some people had called for them to be removed from the lineup, but it's looking very likely that Kneecap will be performing there next week. Now, Kneecap have previously said that they deny this offence. They've called it political policing and also a distraction from what's happening, they say, in Gaza. But we'll be back here in court in August.
OK, Charlotte, thank you. The Health Secretary is considering calls for an independent inquiry into maternity care at an NHS trust. It follows a BBC investigation earlier this year revealing potentially avoidable harm to babies and mothers. Nearly 50 more families and 3 new whistleblowers have come forward since, also raising concerns about inadequate maternity care provided by Leeds Teaching Hospital's NHS Trust. It told the BBC it's deeply sorry that families have been let down and has taken steps to make real changes. Divya Talwar reports.
Tassie Weaver's pregnancy brings back painful memories of her labour 4 years ago. Her first pregnancy was high risk. So when her contractions started, she called a midwife at the Leeds General Infirmary because Tassie says she was told she needed monitoring throughout labour. She says the midwife told her to stay at home. 3 hours later, Tassie called again.
I'm really concerned, can't feel movements, I really think I'm meant to be in hospital. The midwife said to me, this is normal, this happens when women are in labour sometimes because you're so focused on your contractions. So I called again. A couple of hours later, it was kind of early morning by now, and a different midwife answered the phone, and she said to me, come in now, come in straight away. Sorry. And we went in, and but his heart had stopped already.
A review by Leeds identified care issues considered likely to have made a difference to the outcome. The Trust told us immediate internal and external reviews were undertaken and a number of changes were made as a result. Following our coverage earlier this year into potentially avoidable harm to mothers and babies at maternity units in Leeds, nearly 50 more families have come forward with concerns, and there are now growing calls for an independent review into the Trust's maternity services from families, including Lorna and Jamie. Their daughter was stillborn, and a review by the Trust identified care issues which were likely to have made a difference.
It's just so sad, like, just to think of those other families going through just absolute hell that we've been put through. It's the loneliest I've ever been going through this, really. But I don't want that to happen to my worst enemy.
A group of bereaved families wrote to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, asking for senior midwife Donna Ockenden to lead an urgent review into Leeds maternity services. Mr. Streeting met some of them this week and is now considering their calls. The Trust's 2 maternity units are rated as good by the CQC, but since our coverage, 3 more whistleblowers, including 2 senior clinical staff members at the Trust, have told us the rating doesn't reflect services. The CQC said it carried out an unannounced inspection of Leeds maternity services last December, and the Trust was given immediate feedback on urgent concerns. The report will be published shortly. The Trust said, "We are deeply sorry that families have been let down by maternity care. We're fully committed to safe and compassionate care. We recognise we need to make improvements. We've taken steps to make real changes. We're focusing on consistently safe staffing levels and strengthening our culture." Tassie wants urgent lessons learnt so no others have to experience her grief. Divya Talwar, BBC News.
In the last hour, heat health alerts have taken effect across much of England. Temperatures are expected to rise to 33 degrees Celsius, that's 91 Fahrenheit, in some areas over the next few days. And a new study by the Met Office says there's a 50-50 chance that temperatures in the UK could reach 40 degrees Celsius again in the next 12 years. That's 104 in Fahrenheit. Well, that threshold was surpassed for the first time on record in July 2022. Here's our climate editor, Justin Rolat.
We probably all remember the sweltering summer of 2022. That's when the UK's highest ever temperature was recorded, 40.3 degrees in Coningsby in Lincolnshire on July the 19th.
Just taking on plenty of water, staying in the shade as much as we can, and just making sure to keep it and having a wee dip.
This new analysis by the Met Office shows the risk of very high temperatures has been rapidly increasing. The chance of 40-degree heat is now 20 times more likely than it was in the 1960s. And the Met Office is also saying that instead of lasting a couple of weeks at most, heat waves could now go on for more than a month. And far higher temperatures are possible in the climate the UK now experiences, the Met Office says. Its calculations suggest 46-degree heat, the kind of temperatures the Indian capital Delhi experiences in the peak of summer, are now feasible, though very unlikely, here in the UK.
All of these temperatures would be uncharted territory for us here in the UK. We saw during the heat wave of July 2022 that there were some really serious effects on people's health, for example, particularly those in the more vulnerable groups in society. And we saw wildfire even in urban centres. And then there was disruption to our transport networks with melting tarmac and buckling rails.
And the UK isn't just experiencing higher air temperatures. Sea temperatures are rising too. In May this year, an intense marine heat wave warmed UK waters up to 4 degrees above normal temperatures. But some native species will struggle as temperatures rise, including this creature. The quahog clam is native to the UK and can live for up to 500 years, making it the world's longest living animal. Justin Rolat, BBC News, Derbyshire.
Just gone 1:30. A reminder of our top headline this afternoon. Iran's supreme leader has warned the USA not to step up military support for Israel and said there will be irreparable harm if they intervene. And still to come, the legendary Martina Navratilova, who won a record 9 Wimbledon singles titles, reflects on her extraordinary career and shares her thoughts on the current state of tennis. We will have a full forecast for you in the next half hour, but let's check in with Chris and a look at the weather. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Nina. Yeah, we were hearing, weren't we, about the risk of future heat waves here in the UK, but of course we've got our own heat wave right now. Temperatures will be building and pushing northwards over the next few days, and we can see the heat tending to work northwards from southern England, the Midlands, East Anglia today, further northwards. By Saturday, the peak of the heat, we're looking at highs up to 33 degrees Celsius. Now, this can have impacts to infrastructure and also cause problems with those with underlying health conditions. So some people really can't deal with this heat. It's not all great news. That said, many of us will enjoy some sunshine over the course of today, but across Scotland and Northern Ireland, we do have some thicker cloud. You have to wait till tomorrow to see something a bit sunnier and warmer. Nina.
All right, we'll see you soon. Well, let's return to our main story now. Iran's supreme leader has warned Washington of irreparable consequences if the US becomes directly involved in Israel's military campaign against Tehran. It's understood that President Trump is considering joining the attacks on Iran's nuclear sites. And here, Sir Keir Starmer will chair a meeting of the government's emergency committee about the situation in the Middle East later today. Let's have a look back at how things have escalated. Well, last Thursday, the global nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, declared Iran in breach of agreement's obligations for the first time in 20 years. The motion was backed by the UK, the US, France and Germany. And then in the early hours of Friday morning, explosions hit Tehran as Israel carried out a major attack on Iran's nuclear capabilities. Iran threatened severe punishments and quickly retaliated with its own wave of missiles. 6 days later, and the US President Donald Trump is now considering whether to send American forces to support Israel in the conflict. And in the last few hours, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, delivered a pre-recorded message to Iran saying that his country won't surrender. Well, we're joined now by BBC Persian TV's special correspondent, Kasra Naji. Thanks for joining us this lunchtime, Kasra. What can we read into those comments? How were they taken?
It's rather early to sort of gauge the reaction in Iran to that speech. He just appeared on Iranian television in video. We were expecting him to do exactly what he did and say what he did. He was defiant, typically hardline, saying that Iran will not surrender. He said, the quotation from him is that in the same way as the Iranian nation will stand firm in the war that has been imposed on it, it will stand firm against the imposed peace. Don't forget that President Trump has called on Iran to surrender, and of course he says we will not surrender. And also, as you said in your introduction, there is a warning to the Americans not to get involved, or they will pay a heavy cost.
And Kasra, people living in Iran are accustomed to living under this threat, under this cloud. But how has life shifted since Thursday, since Friday?
Well, they're not used to this. In fact, the situation that they are facing now is unprecedented throughout the history of the Islamic Revolution in Islamic Republic in Iran since the 1979 revolution. We haven't seen anything like this, even during the 8 years of Iran-Iraq war. But nevertheless, it's unprecedented, it's huge, and people are stressed, people are very fearful. There are shortages of food coming up, bread, and also fuel. So they are wondering what is going to come next and whether lawlessness and chaos is going to follow if there is a significant weakening of the regime.
Kasra, thank you. That's Kasra Naji from our BBC Persia team. We'll be back with you soon from Salford. But now on BBC One, it's time to join our colleagues with the news. Where you are.
Hello and welcome to Sports Day. I'm Tanya Arnold. Here are the headlines this Wednesday lunchtime. The man who stalked Emma Raducanu earlier this year is stopped from buying tickets to Wimbledon. The England players talk about the online abuse they get, with Lauren James saying it's constant. And the rise of flag football in the country, with the sport set to feature in the next Olympics. Good afternoon. You may remember back in February when British #1 Emma Raducanu was left in tears during a match at a tournament in Dubai after seeing a man who'd followed her to 4 successive tournaments in the stands. He was given a restraining order, but he's been caught trying to apply for tickets for Wimbledon. A warning, this report from Laura Scott contains flashing images from the start.
Emma Raducanu's extraordinary US Open win in 2021 turned her into an overnight sensation. The British #1 has been in the constant glare of the spotlight ever since, which has brought some unwanted attention. Earlier this year, a man followed the 22-year-old to 4 tournaments around the world before exhibiting fixated behaviour towards her at the Dubai Championships. After spotting him in the crowd, she hid behind the umpire's chair in tears and said she could barely breathe. He was given a restraining order by Dubai police, but the encounter took its toll.
I'm obviously wary when I go out, try not to be careless about it, because you only realise how much of a problem it is when you're in that situation.
The BBC can now reveal that the same man tried to get to this year's Wimbledon, but was thwarted by the club's security system. He applied for tickets in the public ballot, but his name was red flagged. His ban from attending the championships came after his name was circulated around tennis authorities following the incident in Dubai. It's brought the subject of security into sharper focus ahead of Wimbledon. During the championships, there are more than 1,000 staff involved in security, and they have around 500 CCTV cameras. They even hire in a team of fixated threat specialists who can be on hand when players are being escorted through a crowd. And protection officers are located behind players' benches during matches. Wimbledon say player safety is their #1 priority.
We absolutely understand that they are concerned. We're liaising with the tours, with the Met Police, with other security agencies right through the year to think about the types of risks we need to look at and adjusting what we put in place. So I would say to them they should have confidence when they're here, and if they are concerned on any basis, they should come and talk to us about that.
Raducanu has made positive progress on court this year, climbing back to number 36 in the world. But even at her young age, what happened in Dubai wasn't her first experience of a fixated fan. In 2022, this man, Amrit Magar, was given a 5-year restraining order after using this hand-drawn map to walk 23 miles to her London home. Other players have had distressing encounters too, like the 5-time major winner Iga Swiatek, who was verbally abused by an aggressive fan at the Miami Open. In a week when top stars have raised concerns about their online safety, it's clear threats can cross over into the real world too, showing there's no room for complacency when it comes to the protection of players. Laura Scott, BBC News, Wimbledon.
Well, as Laura alluded to there, the online abuse aimed at sports stars, women in particular, can be extreme. England footballer Alessia Russo says it's never-ending and incredibly damaging, and she plans to stay off social media during major tournaments. She'll be part of the England side defending the Euros title in Switzerland next month, and her concerns are shared by goalkeeper Hannah Hampton, who's revealed she considered quitting football over comments she'd received. And another member of the squad, Lauren James, says it's ridiculous.
The abuse never really stops, and sometimes this could be nothing to do with like me playing or my performance or win or lose. Like it could be someone they've lost at FIFA with my card, or my card didn't score, or you know, my card scored against them and they've lost, and then they're sending me abuse.
Next season's Premier League fixtures have been announced, and here are a few from the opening weekend. After cruising to the title in April, Liverpool will take on Bournemouth at Anfield in the curtain raiser on Friday the 15th of August, looking to put the first points of the new campaign on the board. Among the promoted sides, Leeds welcome Everton for the Monday night game. Arsenal, on the back of a hat-trick of second-place finishes, start away to Manchester United. All the fixtures are on the BBC Sport website. England's under-21s will make the quarter-finals of the Euros with a draw against Germany and Slovakia later. They could take a little inspiration from the under-19 side, who produced a remarkable comeback in Bucharest. Trailing Germany 5-1 with 40 minutes to go, they scored 4 goals in 11 minutes to draw 5-all. Crystal Palace's Jesse Derry with the most unlikely of equalisers, thanks to some good fortune, and that keeps their hopes of reaching the knockout stage alive. England's cricketers are gearing up for the first men's test of the summer against India, which starts on Friday at Headingley. India will be without 2 of their most dangerous batters, Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. And fast bowler Bryden Cass is looking forward to facing a new-look India.
They're quality players. Again, you know, depending on what the surface plays like, you know, I think, you know, any batter that you're bowling at, you know, with a new ball or their first 20 balls is susceptible to getting out. So, you know, whenever we have an opportunity at any of their top order batters, we'll have plans and processes in place, you know, to obviously knock them over as quick as we can.
Now it's a sport that has all the speed and drama of American football, but without the full-on body contact. Flag football is one of the fastest growing sports in schools and will be included in the next Olympic Games for the first time. The national championships were held in Leeds, from where Sally Hurst reports.
It's the high-octane, non-contact version of American football. Instead of tackling players to the ground, the defensive team must remove a flag from the ball carrier. 28 schools from across the country are competing to be crowned national champion.
I like flag football because it's like you get to do it with lots of people, and it's like
I don't know, it's like fun when you do it. It's more of a fun sport, I'd say.
To be good at flag football, you have to be good with your sportsmanship and teamwork, and you have to be able to communicate with others.
It's just really competitive, and like many people have only just been introduced to it, so you're just learning all together.
There's been a real push by the NFL UK to promote flag football in schools, especially since it was announced that the sport will be part of the next Olympic Games in LA in 2028. One person excited about that is Sam Fossey, who lives in Barnsley. He was introduced to flag football as a child growing up in the States, and after returning to the UK, went on to play American football for Great Britain's national team, the GB Lions.
It's amazing because obviously we always think American football, so we always think it's always in America, that's the only pathway of doing this. But now being involved in the Olympics and having things available in our country where we can actually do and play at a high level and actually compare to the rest of the world and America, it's just a great opportunity, and it's really good to see.
Leeds United is now owned by the NFL side San Francisco 49ers, and they've started their own drive to get children playing the game, an initiative backed by the West Yorkshire Mayor.
In the first year, the 49ers have got 1,000 youngsters involved in flag football, and their ambitions, are to double that, treble that as the years go on. So currently it's just in Leeds, but we're working in partnership to ensure that that can also widen out across West Yorkshire.
At grassroots level, flag football has a lot of work to do to compete for attention with well-established school sports like football, rugby and netball. But it's growing in popularity, with girls and young women in particular getting to grips with a new sport from scratch.
It certainly looks a lot of fun. In rugby league, Callum Watkins has agreed a one-year contract extension at Leeds Rhinos. The 34-year-old rejoined the Rhinos in April after leaving financially troubled Salford. He'll stay until at least the end of next season and says he's already discussed a role with the club beyond his playing career. And Jack Draper and Dan Evans are looking for a place in the quarter-finals at Queen's this afternoon. That's on BBC Two, and Fran Jones is in the round of 16 at the Nottingham Open. You can follow that one on the iPlayer. You can also follow all their progress on the BBC Sport website and app while perusing those Premier League fixtures. But goodbye for now.
Now, after being left with devastating facial injuries, a cyclist from Somerset became one of the first people to be helped by an NHS 3D printer. Dave Richards from Devon required multiple reconstruction operations at Southmead Hospital in Bristol, as Matthew Hill reports.
So I was out cycling with two of my best friends. A lovely sunny day. A driver came up behind us. He was under the influence of alcohol and he was on his phone. My two friends were not clear. I unfortunately got trapped underneath the vehicle, so I suffered severe burns down one side of my body and face.
For Dave Richards, the Bristol 3D Medical Centre has been a lifeline since it opened in April. The 75-year-old from Devon has come for regular prosthetic facial fittings with reconstructive scientist Amy Davey.
Claire's going to just be changing the shape and position a little, but we were
a lot of DI.
I think so, yeah. What we're doing here in our scan is to capture David in the 3D form digitally. And what that means is we can then use replicas of him in a digital space to then design parts of these prostheses or the moulds or the splints to then either 3D print those splints themselves or 3D print parts of those to use for prosthetics.
What's unique about this regional centre is that it has 3D imaging as well as printing and design software all under one roof, and that means fewer trips for patients as well as a more streamlined system for staff. The scanner tool can image an individual whilst they sit in a specially designed planning room. It can even scan moving babies. Most of the specialist equipment is funded by the Southmead Hospital charity. This is one of the first NHS hospitals to receive a Peak printer. It can make, for example, a 3D model of a damaged kidney to show surgeons not only the area to be removed, but also to highlight nerves and blood vessels to avoid before the operation. And with the final touches, patients with disfigurements like Dave can begin to live a more normal life.
But most of it is in my head, how I perceive other people will think about me, whereas a lot of the time people don't notice or don't say anything, or just accept the way I am.
But the prosthesis makes that a lot easier.
Oh, it does, yes. Especially if if I want to socialise a lot, I feel much more comfortable in myself if I look in a mirror and I look reasonable.
Matthew Hill, BBC News.
Wow, life-changing for him. Now, Wimbledon gets underway this month, and one of the championship's greatest names is Martina Navratilova. She won 9 singles titles and has been speaking to the BBC's Amal Rajan about her career and the United States, which she's called home for the past 50 years.
How's your health right now?
It's all good, knock on wood. Yeah, all clear, and no side effects at all. The cure was hell, but the aftermath has been great, and I was lucky on that front because people can have lifelong issues. No salivary glands, the voice box can be affected, swallowing, so I need to chew my food a little bit better, but that's about it, so I'm good.
What's the biggest challenge facing women in tennis today?
It's still trying to get the corporate money, because we still are lacking and lagging behind the guys in financials. And also, men's sports has been around for 150 years. Women's sports is very young, and it's just the right thing to do.
We'll talk about the right thing to do. I want to get your views on trans athletes in sports. You have been very outspoken. So just looking at your social media on Twitter and elsewhere, you said so. For instance, you said, it's not for failed male athletes, whatever age. This is not right and it's not fair. This to you is a question of morality, isn't it? It's about justice. And as you cast it, it's about being fair to women who are participating.
Absolutely. And there's a certain stepladder that you have to go through before you get to elite sport. So it starts really in high school. And then you come out to go into your local meet, and there's a boy that now has a ponytail and nail polish and identifies as a girl. That's all fine and well, but the ponytail and nail polish does not a female make. And now these girls are like, I can't compete against that. I have no chance.
What do you think about where tennis has got to? Because the WTA permits transgender women to participate if A, they provide a written and signed declaration that they are female or non-binary, B, their testosterone levels are below a certain limit for 2 years, and C, they sustain those levels. What do you think about that position that the WTA has got to?
I think it's wrong. I think it's still wrong because, number one, you don't lose the 5 inches of built-in height. Average male is 5 inches taller than a female. Then you add arm length, you got like 7 inches. You got this much height just here. So I have to jump this much higher for an overhead as the guy, that identifies as a woman, to be on the same level.
Recently in the UK, the Supreme Court ruled that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex. Is your message to the world of tennis that they should follow the lead of the UK Supreme Court and be that clear and that definitive?
100%. I think sports has always been on the front of social change and social progress. And this way, we can be on it again in affirming the right of women and girls to sex-based spaces.
Let me just
and being in the right side of history.
Let me just push back for one moment on what you say, because one consequence of your taking those views might be that people who are trans, who've been through terrible experiences many times, will face more public persecution, and they're already terribly persecuted, and that actually we should all, including you, spend a bit more time being sympathetic to what people who've gone through that process, who've transitioned, are experiencing.
Very sympathetic, but that still doesn't give him right into women's sex-based spaces. What about the women? What about the girls? And every athlete affects every girl on that pitch, on that playing field.
The other subject on which you've been very outspoken of late is your adopted homeland of modern America. And I note that on your pinned tweet on the platform X, you say that you grew up in a totalitarian, authoritarian country, which we've spoken about, Czechoslovakia, under the Soviet Union. And basically you say you refuse to be someone who lives in another one. Do you really fear America? your home, is turning into a totalitarian, authoritarian country?
Don't you see that? I mean...
Totalitarian?
Well, yeah. When they are checking your all your social posts to decide whether you can stay in the country, even though you already have legal visa, and they want to send you back. We made it so difficult for people to get legal status, immigration status in America, and then we complain about illegal immigrants because we make it almost impossible. And then the people that have done it by the book, they still get chucked out. What is not totalitarian about that?
So what would happen to a young Martina today, someone who dreamed of America?
I would not be able to get. They wouldn't let me in, probably, because I'm not loyal to Donald Trump. I guess. I don't know what would happen to me, but I would... If I was now still in that same position and I had to go live somewhere, it would not be America, because it's not a democracy at the moment.
How would you like to be remembered in years to come?
I'd like to be remembered.
Martina Navratilova, thank you so much for your time.
And you can see the full interview on BBC Two tonight at 7 o'clock, and it's available now on the iPlayer. Now, let's get the weather with Chris. You said it earlier, it's not for everyone, but lots of our viewers do love the sunshine.
Yeah, I know lots of people that like the sunny weather, lots of people that like the heat as well, but I also know people that detest the heat. And it is going to be getting hotter over the next few days as a heat wave starts to build across parts of the UK. Today, really, quite a warm day. Temperatures could reach 29 degrees around the London area, but the heat spreads northwards as we go through the next few days, peaking at Saturday, when we're likely to see 33 Celsius in the forecast. It is going to feel really quite hot, and it's that heat that can have impacts to infrastructure and can have negative consequences for people's health, particularly those with underlying health conditions. Today, plenty of sunshine around, but across Scotland and Northern Ireland, we have seen a little bit more in the way of cloud, and there are a few patches of rain still to come here with a weak weather front in place. Now, it won't be raining all the time, just a few spots across these northwestern areas. Eastern Scotland, the clouds thinning and breaking, so you get a few sunny spells, but the best of the sunshine further southwards across England and Wales. For the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, temperatures widely today reaching the mid-20s, but peaking at about 28 or 29 into the London area. Low 20s generally for Wales and Northern England. Should feel pleasant here. We're into the teens for most of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Overnight tonight, our weather front continues to very slowly pull its way northwards. So again, there could be a few more patches of light rain coming and going, nothing heavy. Temperatures not too warm, around 12 or 13 degrees pretty widely, but a 16 in the capital, where temperatures will be quite slow to fall. Tomorrow, well, we have some very high levels of pollen, partly triggered by the sunshine that will be even more extensive. So let's take a look at the weather picture for tomorrow. Those sunny skies working northwards into northern England, a good part of Northern Ireland, and increasingly the sun coming out in Scotland too. It is a day of rising temperatures, and for the first time this year, we're likely to see temperatures hit the 30 degrees Celsius mark towards the Greater London area. Warmer for Wales, 29 is probably Wales's warmest day tomorrow, and a 28 for Northern England. Still low to mid-20s for Scotland and Northern Ireland, so much warmer than today, given it will be a sunnier day. Friday's forecast, again, plenty of sunshine around, but we're starting to get more of a southerly flow across the UK, and that's going to help boost those temperatures even further. 24 for Belfast, a 26 for both Aberdeen and for Glasgow. The hot spots, again, could reach around 29 or 30 degrees Celsius, and for the weekend, Saturday is the peak of the heat, when we're going to get these southerly winds dragging in some even warmer air from France and Spain. And so temperatures are likely to hit about 33 degrees Celsius around the London area. Very hot as well for Wales, still pretty warm for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it does start to turn fresher for most of us as we head into Sunday. That's how it's looking, Nina.
OK, some rain on the way then by weekend. Chris, thank you so much. That's all from today's BBC News at 1. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.